everybody, and welcome to our podcast. This is episode 1 of Yappin and Snackin, where we do a little yapping, we do a little bit of snacking about life and all the goings-ons in the world.
Everything
I'm
that
Leah.
makes everything awesome. And I'm Mike.
Yes.
Welcome in. Hello.
Hello. And
Hello.
today, I think our first topic, uh, Mike and I have noticed quite a bit of 90s nostalgia hopping right on back into 2022. It feels like a bit of a time loop for us.
We live in a space-time continuum. It is 2002. No one can convince me otherwise. It's 20 years ago right now.
And I mean, I think we're seeing it everywhere in our entertainment. We're seeing it in music, we're seeing it in fashion, we're seeing it in TV. And if you've seen, Stranger Things or Never Have I Ever or a lot of the other Sex Education, there's a lot of TV shows out there, whether they're set in the 80s and 90s or not. Like obviously Stranger Things is set in the 80s, but some of the other shows like Never Have I Ever or Sex Education, they're set modern day, but it feels like they're straight out of the 90s, both fashion and sort of like culture wise. And
They really
I
do.
think we could
Absolutely 100%. That's what
I
it
think we
feels
can
like to me too.
attribute part of that to like the fact that the writers and creators grew up in the 90s, so they're probably kind of rehashing some of their childhood
Absolutely.
in their writing. So I think that's part of why we're seeing that, but we're seeing it in music too. I mean, a lot of artists
Can,
that were popular in the early 2000s have released new music.
can I play something for you? In
Sure.
in thoughts of that.
Absolutely. I'm
Let's
gonna take a bite of my snack for today. I thought since we're talking 90s nostalgia, I'll throw it back with like one of my favorite childhood snacks, just like some bread and butter.
Ooh.
Because we don't have anything else.
I mean, case in point number 1 right here. This is a song by a band that was big in the early 2000s. And if you haven't recognized it yet, you have issues. The fact that Nickelback has a slapper, ladies and gentlemen, leads me to believe this is my first proof of evidence that we are stuck in a space-time continuum. The fact that Nickelback has a hit song, and it's going to be a hit, there's no doubt about it, is my first piece of...
I think that Nickelback wouldn't have been allowed to come back without a hit song. You know what I mean? Like if they were going to grace our presence again, like they were going to do it with a banger.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
otherwise-
100%.
I don't know when it. I don't really remember when, why, or how it became cool to hate on Nickelback, but it did seem like a collective. I think sort of like the word moist. Everybody just decided that we hated Nickelback. Like, Nickelback was good.
It literally just happened. Like one day, all of a sudden, I was in college. I was listening to Nickelback, and everybody was like, "No, this isn't cool. This isn't what we wanted, man." And I go, "What do you mean? We've been listening to this forever. I've been requesting this song for years." No, this song sucks, dude. I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
I don't know if it was the If Everyone Cared album. I think that's really where like it was cheesy, but in all the wrong ways.
Oh yeah.
And it had Photograph and it had Far Away and like all of the songs that really weren't Nickelback's thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But or was it the Spider-Man soundtrack?
No, that song was
No,
actually
was that
no. Chad Kroeger and what's his name from Saliva doing that song. That was a fantastic piece
Because
of art.
I like that. I
Don't-
like that song too.
Don't you
But
wish that upon those two gentlemen? Those two gentlemen, that was an amazing song.
I know. Look, the Spider-Man soundtrack had some bangers because if you remember correctly, Dashboard Confessionals Vindicated was also on the
Oh,
Spider-Man
Jesus.
soundtrack.
Goodness gracious.
And
That's, I
can't
think, the
remember-
only Dashboard Confessional song that I know. I think it's actually on 2 or 3 of my playlists still to this very day.
It was so funny because I actually, side note, not completely unrelated, but like personal little tidbit here. My friends and I went to a concert. We went to see the Struts. They were headlining, but guess who was also there? Dashboard Confessional. And Vindicated is like the one song that everyone knows, but my friend that we were with, like she knew every single song. Biggest Dashboard Confessional fan ever. I knew a couple others in there. Stolen was another big one that I liked. I guess.
No, literally, I think Vindicated is the only song that I knew. And that's what happens when you're trying to drink water during a podcast. It just goes down the
I
wrong
got the fizzy water too.
goes down the wrong pipe.
It happens.
I you know, and then you look at where we are just musically.
Yeah.
And it feels like every song that you hear on radio right now has some sort of component that goes back to the 90s. And
You
it's
do. And I think
amazing.
whether it's samples, I mean, we were just talking about David Guetta,
I
his new
was,
song.
you know what? I actually had you in mind because I was about to play it. Except if I can find the right version, you know? That's the problem. Like,
Yes.
you have to find the right version of the song.
Yeah, but that's one that is sampling, you know, a lot of things were blue in the early 2000s,
Right?
you know? I'm blue, the blue man group. Remember that movie Big Fat Liar?
Absolutely,
The
I
guy spends
do.
he spends half the movie being blue. Yeah, a lot of blues clues, a lot of blues things.
Here's the song for you. It takes me away for a night, baby, but no one but yeah, I'm feeling alright.
But it's gonna be a big hit because it was already a big hit.
Oh yeah, you're right. It
You're
absolutely
ma-
is a huge hit already.
Like you're making magic with already magic. You're like, what if we took something really great and just it remained really great? Like I feel like and we're seeing a lot of songs being sampled from the 90s. And I mean, we saw it in the 90s too, where I feel like 90s music, I mean, take Shaggy's Angel. That samples like three songs
Shorty,
at
you're
once.
my angel. You're my
You're my
darling
angel.
angel.
Joker is in there on the bass beat. It's
Oh yeah, huh?
yeah, there's like three, and every time I listen to it, I'm like, wait a second. But I love that song. Loved it.
It's a great song. Underrated song. Very
It
underrated.
really
song.
is. I'm a big Shaggy fan.
I could tell. So how many songs on your current playlist are from the 90s? You think? Or
Well-
the 2000s? 90s, early 2000s. Let's park where we're going to talk about because there's a few other people that we need to talk about from this nostalgia era as we're discussing.
Absolutely. On my Party Jams playlist, it's probably heavily made up of early 2000s, 90s artists. I mean, you got your Britney, your Christina, the boy bands, the classics that our age group likes to jam out to that makes it a party.
Absolutely. I think there's one playlist that is literally 90s and early 2000s and it like every once in a while a current song sneaks into it. Probably because Kendra, my wife, has added it to the playlist because she's like, this is a great song. And I'm like, this playlist was supposed to be nostalgia. This is my childhood. I don't care. I want to hear WAP.
I think the reason I added some newer pop artists was because, and it's only a few, it's because I was at a family gathering and like I have some younger cousins. And it had dawned on me that they were not jamming out quite the same way. And I was like,
no.
oh no.
Oh no.
Like, oh no.
Have we've crossed that line.
Yeah, but I think so many of us who, whether we knew it or not, were just sort of victims of the 90s era and just growing up in the early 2000s, victims of diet culture and body image and honestly a lot of sexism too and
Yes.
races. Like, there were a lot of isms that were still happening in the media that we were like, yeah, this is normal. And
I mean, take
seeing the seeing the Britney Spears documentary, I think that really like kickstarted this 90s nostalgia time loop revolution.
Well,
that's healing.
That and the fact that she's back to where she was. She's trying to get back to the top.
She is trying to get back to the top, and I feel bad because I have the sneaking suspicion that the public is going to be just as unkind to her this time around as they were before. Not her fans, but I think the people in the first place who were there. I mean, and when you look back, I mean, Britney's mental breakdown, she was in her early 20s. And essentially, you had a nation of adults picking on a young girl, on a young woman, her whole career, a little girl into a young woman. And they were never going to take her seriously. So I think it's been healing for us to see her try to shine and free herself. My fear, the reason why I think that she's going to get just as much backlash as she did before is because I think with the conservatorship, all these years later, mentally, she's still 19. You know, she hasn't socialized properly. She's never had a chance to grow up.
Homegirl ain't 19. She's 16. And she just found Instagram for the first time.
Right.
Let's
So
be
she's posting these nudes and these weird videos that they seem on brand for a teenager with a bunch of freedom because I
yes.
think mentally that's where she's at. She's a teenager who just got her freedom because she spent all those years not actually growing up because she couldn't. And nothing was in her control. Nothing was in her control.
I'm pretty
And so I
sure there was this one post. I'm gonna try to find it right now.
yeah, go for it.
Where and if you're watching this back on YouTube, you'll know what we're talking about. By the way, we're not only going to be an audio podcast, but we are also going to be a visual podcast as well.
Yes.
So,
So you can join us. Also, by the way, the snackin' part of Yappin and Snackin, please feel free to grab your snacks and snack alongside us. Whatever
but,
your favorite after school favorite was.
but there's always this thing about Britney, and everybody's like, she was so sexualized in the 90s and blah 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 and yada 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 in the early 2000s, and then you look at some of the things that she's posting now on social media on Instagram, and it's insane. So I've actually pulled it up here. Hold on. So when you look at this, I mean, look right here. There's one. There's a nude.
Yep.
There's another one where she's sunbathing without a top on, and she lets you
Yeah.
know about it too. That's the other thing. So,
Oh, yeah.
so what's the difference between all of this that's on the screen, where she's flaunted? Well, she always flaunted it, but that's because she was taught to flaunt it. Let's also be honest about that. This girl was Miss Conservative 101. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize that. But
She was like a goody Southern Christian girl from I want to say Mississippi.
there's Miss Ho Ho right there, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but
No.
but then you look at like other Instagrammers who Instagram less than or more than that, like with more clothing
Yeah.
on, and they get banned. And
Yep.
Britney gets a pass. She had such a traumatic childhood, and I feel like that there's
She did, though.
there's a double standard here, though. There really is a
There is a double standard, and I think honestly, I think most child stars did live a traumatic childhood
They did.
unless they wanted to be there themselves. Like unless they chose like, "Oh my gosh, singing, acting, that is the career for me and I love it." I think a lot of child stars got abused by their parents and Hollywood because I mean, take Britney for example and the sexualization of her. It wasn't she didn't put herself in that Catholic schoolgirl uniform.
No, she didn't.
Like she didn't do that. And I think of that Barbara Walters interview where Barbara Walters tells her that she was like, moms are saying that you deserve to die, basically. And that's horrible. Why would you tell a 16-year-old girl there are mothers out there saying that about her? Not to mention, if you're a mom, like what's your I it kind of drives me crazy when parents look at pop stars and they're like, well, they're such a bad influence on kids. And it's like, well, it's your job to guide them through what you deem good and bad influences. Like Britney Spears doesn't really care what like she doesn't care that you think she's a bad babysitter. Like she's not babysitting your kids. It's not her job.
No. And she and honestly at that point she doesn't know the influence that she's having on Americana. She has absolutely
Right.
no idea. Maybe
No,
okay.
she doesn't know that denim on denim is going to be amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody will be entranced
Thank
in
you.
the denim on denim.
Thank you for bringing it up. Let's go straight to the next topic then. Hold on. Let's go to the next topic, which is 90s fashion. Oh Lord.
Sure, yeah.
Oh Lord, look at
And
this stuff.
I actually think some of the charm of 90s and especially early 2000s red carpet fashion is its own spectacular moment in time because I think for younger stars and starlets they actually got to look like kids on the red carpet. I mean, they got to wear silly denim outfits. I mean,
What are they thinking?
what is that? What is that?
What are they thinking? Like like Britney actually looks cute there.
She does. I don't know what JT's got going on. That hat.
I don't know if the suit wants to be a tuxedo, a denim tuxedo, or if it's
the jute. The jute.
Jeez Louise. Oh, I didn't know that this happened. I didn't know that Katy Perry went for it too.
Oh, yeah. It was iconic. It's an iconic look. People have tried to recreate it, but nobody does it like Britney and Justin.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Incredible.
Look at this.
But I think, like,
I mean,
yeah, some of the
Jesus.
charm of the early aughts was they got to look like kids. I mean, like, they got to wear these silly layers and scarves and things that adults should never wear
What is
on the
Cisco
red
wearing?
carpet.
What is Cisco wearing? He has
Is
like
that Ashley Tisdale on the corner there?
which one?
I can't tell from
This
here,
one?
like towards the bottom.
No. This one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that
that
is
is
her. And
Ashley
look, and
Tisdale. Look at you.
she's a teenager and she is dressed like a teenager. Where I feel like a lot of times now, like the red carpet was much more casual for teenagers back
I
then,
mean,
and I feel like now, look at the Stranger Things cast. Every time they've made an appearance, they've been dressed up way more sophisticated and way older than they ever were. But I think when you look at like
look at this.
TikTok fashion, because when I scroll through TikTok, I do see a lot of
This is
like
nuts.
outfits and fashion.
Yeah.
That like that the little tiny tops, and my fear is that the low rise jeans are going to come back into fashion, and this has been the millennial fear on TikTok as we slowly watch Y2K come back around with like the fuzzy tops and the like, you remember those like fuzzy pens, like a lot of girls dressed like those fuzzy pens in the early 2000s, you know, like it was, everything was pink, everything was poofy, think Legally Blonde, everything was Elle Woods.
Oh no, I do remember that movie. I get to watch that movie all the time when it's on TV. Don't
It's
you
a
worry.
fantastic movie.
Don't you worry.
And
Not by choice.
everybody should watch.
Not by choice.
Oh, but it should be by choice.
Mm,
Fantastic movie.
no.
Yes, it is.
It's a great movie, and I'm okay with watching something a couple times. Don't get me wrong.
It's the couple hundred that you
Yes,
start to
yes.
lose interest.
Yes.
That's fair. But I can say that Legally Blonde is a great comfort movie. But I think that's sort of the fashion that's coming back around is very Elle Woods, like almost a caricature of whatever profession it is that you want to do in like unapologetic girly fashion, which I think the 2000s was really all about. Like for the first time, we started to kind of see this girls rule, boys drool slogans passed around. We really did though. I feel like there was a lot of that idea, kind of like you'd see it on t-shirts and you'd see it in movies, and all of a sudden we were really starting to see this sort of stylized girl power
Which was
coming
great.
back
Which was
around.
great and all.
Absolutely it was, but I don't think it was still very superficial at the time, and I think
It was super.
with
It was girls superpower so that they can control what we're eating and they can control how we look. Because they were
and
like,
it was
because they always push the whole, oh, let's that you wanna if you wanna be a Supergirl, you gotta dress like this, or you've got to be super
yeah.
skinny, and then there's the body dysmorphia that happened all through our childhood.
Yes. And I think that's where our fear of the low rise jeans is coming in for the generation behind us. We're like, it sounds stupid. It sounds so silly, but a whole generation was traumatized by low rise jeans
We were.
because you had huge stars of the time. I mean, like, look at Drew Barrymore. She was the it girl of the it girls.
Yes.
And she was considered chubby. People were like, Drew Barrymore, she's kind of fat for me. And you'd be like, what? And it's because heroin chic, literally the body type called heroin chic because of Kate Moss,
Mm-hmm.
was in, and everybody was striving for that. And diet culture was everywhere. Everyone's parents was on a slim fast diet. Every commercial had Weight Watchers. Every joke in the movies involved some sort of diet related scene in chick flicks, and
Yeah.
it was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. Kate Winslet was called fat after Titanic, and you were like, she looks like a healthy, normal human being to me. But every time I sit down, and you know, like when you sit down and your thighs expand, like that still haunts us to this day.
It
Because
absolutely does for me. Every time,
for
every
everybody.
time I sit down, I pray that my pants don't rip.
But like, I think just that image of like when you sit down and your thighs just naturally spread out because that's what bodies do, because it's just what bodies do.
Or
We're like, oh my God, I look fat.
or when anybody sits down and they're super thin and they're like and their abs scrunch up because their natural
Yeah.
skin moves, and then people are like, "Ew, you look so gross. You look so gross right there."
And almost sort of on the flip side of that, like I think when it comes to body image, we've made leaps and bounds on representing different body types in the media and different body types as successful in the media. I mean, I think artists like Lizzo, to be plus size and black and as powerful as she is, and the presence that she is, she's really changed the game for a lot of how women see themselves, I think.
I mean, Lizzo, Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B.
Yeah,
I mean, Cardi B.
absolutely.
Cardi B was a drug dealer and a stripper at one point in her life,
Yes.
and now she's a multi-billionaire.
A lot of Cardi B's songs are autobiographical.
Yes, they
A lot of
are. They
them.
really are. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're all like, oh, this is
No.
my jam. This sounds so good. But this girl, this woman is literally rapping about her
Right.
life. And it's like,
You're
why are you twerking to this? This isn't what this is.
right.
What are you doing? She's like literally crying out. She's like, I had to strip for money. And there you are with her hand on a pole, just going up and down, up and down.
You're like, this is
No.
my song. But I think that it's still so I think sort of like now what we're seeing with that plus size body positivity movement and that's sort of become commercialized. That's almost the superficial level that like the girls rule boys drool was for us growing up. Where like I think it was kind of like girls are cool written by men, and that's kind of like the tagline that we got from
Yeah.
the early 2000s where suddenly this manic pixie dream girl, the it girl was like she isn't like other girls. She likes boy things, but she's still really sexy while she does it. Like she fixes cars in short shorts. But like that's it was still pitting girls against each other. And I think we are finally moving away from that. And I still think like the way that body trends have changed, we're seeing a lot more variety in sizes, but it's still on a very superficial level. Like Aerie and a lot of clothing companies, Victoria's Secret was another one that like they seemed to have these kind of body positivity movements where like, look, we have plus size models in our lineups, but they don't actually carry those plus
No,
sizes. Like it's not quite as
it's
advertised.
always order online. Trust me,
Yeah. And
I
I
know that
think
struggle. That struggle is real with me. Listen, when I go to Victoria's Secret and I can't find the right size for me, it's demoralizing for my life. I get it.
it is though. And so I really think Old Navy really did something when they eliminated the plus size section
Yes.
and
Everybody's the
both
same
straight
size. Everybody's the
yeah,
same
straight
size.
size and plus size was just on the same rack. I mean, there's they just carry all the sizes. You don't have to call it something else. You don't have to make them shop at a different store. I mean, like how there's so many girls my age and your age who were absolutely 100% traumatized by shopping in middle school with their friends.
Absolutely.
Um,
100%.
shopping with shopping with your straight size friends at Hollister or American
See, I've
Eagle
even
or
bothered going into those
Aeropostale.
stores because I knew that I would not be in the correct I would not even be in the store. They would look at me and be like, what do you do? Ew. You shop here?
Yeah.
Gross.
And I mean,
And I wasn't a big dude in high school. Like, I was a big dude, but that's because I was big boned. I'm not like
yeah,
what I
but
am now,
yeah,
where I look like a lineman for the NFL. It's true. I look like a
look great
lineman.
though.
Thank you. Speaking of your Victoria's Secret rant, the new song
Yeah.
by Jax,
Yes.
literally
Yes.
screaming out about it. And
100%.
Kendra had me play it like a couple weeks ago for me when we were driving. I forget. I think we were going to a baseball game, and she played it, and I was like, "What is like?" It slapped. Like there was a great beat to it, but then you listen to the words, and you're like, "This is the types of songs that should be hits right now, not
Yes.
Cardi B shaking her booty all over the place, but like
Yeah.
songs
And
like
I
this."
mean, I think that's also sort of a what makes women feel powerful also differs from woman to woman. I mean, I think you take somebody like Britney Spears, who kind of was sexualized, I think, by her audience and by her producers. And like, yes, she embraced it, but I don't think she ever quite embraced it the way that like Christina Aguilera, who was kind of pitted her direct competition, felt like she owned it with her breakout sexualizing like feminine power song
I
was
mean,
Dirty. I mean, her outfit in Dirty, it's just the chaps and the bikini top, like she
when you wear this to the VMAs,
yeah.
like Homegirl was brainwashed to an nth degree, and I don't know if it was all brainwash. I'm gonna be honest.
I don't know if it was either, and I think
With
they were
Oh, and here's Kylie Jenner doing the iconic look. I'm looking for the iconic look. And then here's another one of
yeah,
Christina Aguilera's 90s and early 2000s runway.
she did. But and I think also as Christina Aguilera is another one who I think because she's kind of run the gambit on body types. Like if you look at her in those early pictures, like in Dirty in the music video, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
she looks ill. She looks sick. She's so skinny in a way that it doesn't feel like her body ought to be. Because of course there's natural, like there's something to be said for natural thinness, but she looks like her arms look
Here,
skeletal.
here. This is after Dirty is like the massive hit. There's
Yeah.
no muscle definition at all. You could tell that this is just
No.
literally somebody who's starving themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, she was young, and obviously, like, teenage bodies are blessed.
Yes. Agreed.
Teenage metabolisms are a lot different than grown up metabolisms.
I miss my teenage metabolism.
But I think, like,
I
when
can't
she
eat
appeared
I
on
can't
The
eat
Voice,
3 Crunchwrap Supremes in one sitting and not gain a pound anymore.
3 burritos at midnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think like when she first appeared on The Voice as a coach, and she was a full-bodied grown woman,
Yes.
looking amazing,
Absolutely.
looking fabulous,
Looking
honestly.
Here.
Like I would want
This is
her body.
this is my proudest photo of Christina Aguilera, the before and after.
Yeah, and she looks so much healthier. And I think there's a lot of stars even that you don't think about ever having had that super skinny phase, but honestly, like Taylor Swift is one that I think her rise to fame, and I think she even talked about it in one of the documentaries
Mhm.
that was on Netflix, where she was starving herself. She wasn't eating, and it shows. Like when you see her in the music video for Blank Space, she looks way too thin, and again, not in like a cutesy teenage
No,
way,
no,
because
no,
at
no,
that
no, no.
point she was in her 20s. She was a grown woman, and I think when you see her now in her happiest and healthiest, like it's quite a difference. And so
Big
I think
difference.
we just, and I follow a lot of, I try to follow a lot of diverse accounts and creators on TikTok, and to see experiences lived outside myself, because I did grow up, you know, fairly slender, um white. Like I checked a lot of the boxes for to be considered conventionally attractive,
Mhm.
or like attractive enough to not get made fun of for the way I looked. Or if I did, I didn't care because I was out, picking dandelions and looking at butterflies, and I was just, not really paying attention to what everybody else was doing sometimes. So I think when I hear the stories of girls that were shopping in Hollister and they didn't carry their size, or they like that scene in Mean Girls where Regina's starting to gain weight and she's trying to squeeze into that size 2 or
Right,
whatever,
right.
and she's like, it's not zipping, and the clerk is like, you can try Sears. Like that was body image
That was body
in the
image. That was
2000s and
body image.
90s.
That was body image 101 for all of us. And I think
Yeah,
a lot of us are still in therapy because of that too.
I think so too. And I think it's like we were saying, I think we have made a lot of leaps and bounds, but I think as people kind of push back against that, and companies don't make money when people are comfortable with their bodies,
Right.
cosmetic companies, weight loss
And
companies,
and and
clothing companies,
and,
nobody makes money when people are comfortable with
and I
themselves.
think you're right. I think we're going to start to see in the next year or two the switch, because we've talked about this, just as friends,
I think
where everybody is so body positive and all this and all that, and then all of a sudden you're going to start to see, hey, you need to start losing some weight. Here's Weight Watchers and all
I
that.
think inspiration is going to come back around, and I just hope that because we're going to be the adults now.
Right, we can control what's being said, and we can control the
Well,
narrative of this is how you explain it to kids. Like, don't listen to
yes,
everything that you're watching, because
I hope.
it is curtailed to what they want you to hear. It isn't this kumbaya that they won't want you and everybody to be happy with.
Yeah, and I hope that we can really guide kids to read between the lines, and to, like you said, inform them that, like, it's all, everything that you see in a commercial is a grab to make money. It's not true. It's not how you should feel about yourself. It's a way to make money off of your self-esteem. They are building you, they're breaking you down so that they can build you up with their products.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we can read the between the lines. You'd like to think that, but if we've learned anything, history repeats itself when we don't learn. So
Right.
I hope that we can guide kids through it. And I think millennials are actually in sort of a unique position to do that, because I think nobody reads between sort of the duality of advertising better than we do, because we grew up without social media, we grew up with social media. Like we really had a unique stance to see between the lines of both. And my fear for kids down the road is that right now TikTok filters are so good.
Yes. Oh my
They're
God,
so
they are so
good.
good.
And they get rid of every imperfection in a way that you will never be able to achieve that naturally,
They
ever.
they literally
But,
make me look like I should be on the runway next to Paris
right.
Hilton, but I'm not.
Any line, any pimple, anything that's on your face that feels like it's out of place, gone. And not in a way that like the Snapchat filters
No,
did, where
it's
you
so
knew
true.
somebody's profile picture was filtered, and filtered again. You're like,
Yes.
all right, Brenda, we know you don't have cat ears.
We know that you are not this person. You need to stop with the fakeness. I get it.
Yeah, the beauty mode does it in a really sneaky way and in a way that, again, will never be able to be achieved naturally. But every skincare product company out there is going to have you believing that if you use their product, you're going to look like a TikTok filter. And again, I hope we can kind of teach kids to read between the lines so that they don't spend thousands of dollars on plastic surgery because it's already happening.
Yeah. We kind of touched on this to start, but can we go back to the 90s and the early 2000s and the music of that era? Because
Oh, absolutely.
that music, that generation, because everybody always says it's the 60s and 70s, especially with classic rock, was the greatest
Yeah,
music generation of the of all the eras. And I'm going to humbly disagree, being a classic
sure.
rock fan and being all that. The 90s and early 2000s was the only time you could probably go to Top 40 radio, listen to Casey Kasem counting down the hits or Rick Dees in the weekly Top 40s. And there was no genre. Top 40 was literally the best music out there at that moment. We went from
It will.
Hootie and the Blowfish to TLC to Nirvana
Nickelback.
to Nickelback.
To Goo Goo Dolls, to Matchbox 20, to Britney Spears. Yeah, you're right. There really wasn't as clearly defined genres. And on one hand, I definitely liked that.
Hmm.
Well, I don't even know if I liked it better per se, but it was definitely different and it was good. And it was fun because there was this sort of freedom and fluidity to music. And I think the other thing that's really unique about how we grew up is that we grew up in the generation of fantastic music. I mean, music that was happening in the 90s and early 2000s, amazing.
There's your girl.
But we liked our parents' music. Yes.
Avril
My
Lavigne.
girl, who's also been coming back around. She's been dropping new music.
She has been. But you
I was so excited.
but we also know there's that theory out there that this is Avril Lavigne. That's come around.
There is the theory that yes, Avril Lavigne died years ago, and what's her name? Melissa, I think, is the doppelganger that took her place.
This is the
Oh,
90s in a nutshell if you're watching
oh,
this. Gwen Stefani with blue hair and Lenny Kravitz looking like Lenny Kravitz.
iconic,
Iconic.
iconic.
But
I loved Gwen Stefani.
in all honesty, I think a lot of things changed when we started to see TRL come into play. And everybody
I think you're right.
and a lot of people don't realize this, but TRL was the first real music show that ever existed that gave us a voice. And they were like, "No, you
Yeah.
pick the music." Like you could always request a song on radio, and back then when you called the radio station, there was at least 50 people there ready to pick up the phone. Now it's all automated, or there's one person there, but they're only there from like 9:30 in the morning until 10:45 because they have 6 other projects that they're working on and they don't have time. But I think TRL was the first one to say, "No, we're not going to tell you what to listen to. We're going to let you pick what to listen to." And it took whatever kumbaya we had going in Top 40 radio and completely destroyed it.
Absolutely. And I think too, the like where we really started to see some of the shifts in music was when music videos really started taking off because suddenly you couldn't just be a singer-songwriter anymore. You had to be pretty and you had to look the part and people were watching you just as much as they were listening to you. And so if you weren't, in addition to being talented, sexy, then you weren't necessarily going to be successful unless you were phenomenally talented. 'Cause
Absolutely.
again, there's sort
100%.
of that conventionally pretty, but I think, uh,
It's almost like the Milli
yeah,
Vanilli thing, like from the early 90s when they got caught lip
yeah,
syncing.
yeah,
It wasn't about the music anymore. Once we got to the early 2000s
right.
and we had the boy band battling, it wasn't about the music and
Yes.
who could play an instrument. It was, can you look good in this look? And so that we could stack you in a boy band and put it out as fast as we can.
Well, and it was how much money could producers and managers, and speaking of the boy bands, because the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were managed by the same guy
A lot of
who
people don't
actively
realize that.
pit them against one another. They don't realize that. And he actively pit them against one another to have them compete and try to outdo each other. Meanwhile, he sat there stealing both of their money
Oh,
because
left
they
and
were
right.
also they were young boys, they were kids. And they didn't know any better. They didn't know how much they had no idea how much money they were supposed to be making.
It's time for nostalgia again.
I was sitting there stealing all their money.
Look at this. Okay,
Aw.
I know 3 of the 4, I think. I don't know who's the bottom right corner or bottom left corner. Is that O-Town?
I can't tell from here. I think so.
Okay.
Should have worn my glasses.
By the way, let's also not forget Hanson Bop's 25
Oh my
years
God.
old. When I saw that on GMA the other week, I was like, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" This was the. I don't know who that bottom one is. What is this? Is this what your wall looked like back in the day?
Honestly, no. I really was not the stereotypical.
Putting all your posters on the
Kid.
wall so that you can gawk at them when you lay down.
To be fair, though, I didn't have my own space in my own room because my sister and I shared a room growing up. So, like, we never really got to make it. Like, neither one of us really got to make it our own. It was always, like, ours together. So,
Can I state that I was really
And-
proud of myself that I guessed that was O-Town and I was right? That's scary.
there you go.
That's scary.
Look at you.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. That means that people know where my head was at in the early 2000s, running around wearing Abercrombie. That was too small for me, and I was like, I'm fitting into this. I don't care. You can't make
But I was
me.
not. But I wasn't a brand name kid. Like anything, like I went to a school where a lot of kids cared about the logo that was slapped on your clothes, as opposed to like whether or not it was a cute outfit. Granted, I didn't wear cute outfits either because I don't know, I didn't really develop my own sense of style until I want to say like late high school. It was even college that like I would say that I really started kind of finding a style that I really liked for myself. But I'm the middle child. My brother is the oldest. So I think when he kind of not dictated, but like he facilitated a lot of our activities growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like my sister and I just naturally took on more stereotypically boy activities. Like we played more video games than a lot of the other girls in my class. I'd say we played more sports. I didn't really play more sports, but like my sister played more sports. I played them, but I wasn't very good at them.
My mom would be proud of me because I finally found somebody other than me, the white boy wearing FUBU. There's Justin Timberlake wearing a FUBU sweatshirt. Now I don't feel bad about wearing it back in the day.
But I didn't care. I didn't have to have
No.
the Uggs. I hated Birkenstocks. I thought they were ugly. I'm sorry. I did.
Why are
And
they back? Like that's the
I don't
part that I
know.
don't understand.
I never got them in the first place, so I can't tell you why they're back. But I was not so married to all the brands that were so popular growing up. So I feel like I didn't quite have the same experience that some of the other kids did growing up because I was just sort of my own little like wallflower type kid.
it's also amazing how much kids will make fun of each other because they don't have
Oh
brand
God,
names.
yeah.
Well, I went to
Absolutely they
I
do.
went to a Catholic high school, so
Yeah.
you know, if you didn't have
I went to
if you didn't have the polo pony on your button down
Yeah.
shirt that you know was
Oh, I
100.
went to a hoity-toity private school too.
So if you didn't have that logo, you weren't in the cool kids club anymore.
But I also guess that like boys and girls make fun of each other differently.
Yes, they do. They really do.
And because girls are sneaky, I really could just ignore it. Like the power move is to ignore it, and then that's it. Like, what are they gonna do if you don't care? They have no power, and so I think that just the cruelty. I think I was challenged early on in life, and I think I put girls in their like I put my bullies in their place young, and that was enough to like establish myself as somebody who didn't get picked on. But people
Mhm.
picked on my friends all the time, and I was always the first one to stand up and be like, "What the heck? Like, you can't make fun of somebody for something that they can't change."
Yeah, that's very true.
Be okay if I think it through. I'm a better person than you. But right now, it hurts so bad.
Let's make some noise. Let's hear your voice.
So speaking about body shaming and, morphism and all that, 90s action movies, early 2000 action movies. There was one
Nothing
person
like them.
and there was always one person on the poster all the time, especially in
yes.
the late 90s. It was Brendan Fraser.
Yes. There's a reason the ladies love George of the Jungle.
Or as Kendra said,
It
Blast from the
wasn't the
Past.
plot.
No, Blast from the Past, another great one. And then, of course, the Mummy franchise.
Oh, my God.
The greatest
love The
franchise
Mummy.
ever.
I love adventure movies like Indiana Jones, The Mummy, National Treasures 1 and 2.
Right.
Here for it. And
Well-
Brendan Fraser was he was the it guy. He was everything in the 90s.
I mean, this whole cast, hold on. This whole cast right here is a smoke show. Absolute smoke show.
Literally every single person, every
Oh,
main
no, it
bad
didn't work.
guy even.
Oh, no.
Like, ah.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably going to be like, what are they doing? There we go. That's
Right?
what I was looking for. That's what we were looking for.
That.
This is just a smoke show. By the way, the meme of this guy is hysterical, where they're all like, Brendan Fraser was good looking, but every woman was swooning for him.
I think everybody was just swooning for the whole cast, honestly.
The whole cast.
The whole cast. It was everyone.
And then
Bad guys, the good guys.
And then Tom Cruise decided, oh, I want to make another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like to pretend that didn't happen. That's kind of like The Godfather 3.
Exactly.
We forget about the Mummy.
Okay, so this is where we're at with Brendan Fraser at this point.
Yes.
Very
And he
different person.
he was the it guy. I mean, he was the action guy. And I think a lot of the stunts that he performed in The Mummy, honestly, just wrecked his body. I mean, like, he was hospitalized for some time.
He's said that he's needed like 2 or 3 back surgeries from the stunts that he did in The Mummy Returns.
Yeah, that's what it was.
When they were rolling underneath the rock and the rock was coming down. Like, apparently he really messed up his back. Like, to the point where
believe it.
he couldn't walk at times. Like, they were literally wheeling him into place so that he could continue the scene.
I think the even wilder thing about the story of Brendan Fraser is, so, like, you hear that and you're thinking, okay, well, it beat up his body and maybe he just kind of quit acting. And he did sort of, like that is kind of the trajectory of how his career went, that he took a step back from acting. But, and he did have a son with special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he had an ugly divorce that caused a lot of money. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that he was actually sexually assaulted too. I think
He was the
Peter
first.
Berg-
He was Me Too'd before Me Too was cool.
First of all, Me Too was never cool. But
Well,
he was Me Too
you know what I meant.
before the
Like,
hashtag.
before it
Yes.
became a hashtag, before it became commonplace to be picked up.
Yes, no, I know what
My
you meant.
English no so good. No, my English not so good.
I knew what you meant. I was just messing with you. But yes, he was, and I think for at the time, especially a prominent male in Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
would also not have been believed.
Right,
and I think
And the fact
Hollywood
that he was Brendan Fraser.
right. And
Like-
so I think that is what like secretly ended his Hollywood career. That if he said anything, which I think he tried to say something, he got blacklisted.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where the whole full circle that we're now in a space-time continuum where we're back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Brendan Fraser
Yes.
is back to being relevant again for the first time
Yes.
in 25 years.
He's got a movie called The Whale coming out.
And he's playing a 600-pound man in this movie, I think.
Something like that. And he got like a 6-minute standing ovation in Venice.
Yes, in Venice, and not
Right.
Cannes. I always get the
Yes.
two confused.
Yeah. It was the Venice Film Festival.
Yes.
And everybody was just
Well, he thought that they were applauding the movie.
yeah.
And then
no, I think
and then he
too.
realized, "Oh no, they're actually applauding me." And that's
I
when he
think
broke
he's
down.
He's such a genuine sweet guy, it seems. I mean, obviously I've never met him. I would love to.
I think he
if
would
this
be
gets
great.
to you.
I think he would be a great interview just to talk about Hollywood and things like that.
I think he would too, and I think he's kind of pulled back. He's lived a fairly quiet, humble life
Mhm.
compared to most celebrities, and I'm really excited to see him kind of back in Hollywood. I think
Well,
we need more. I think it's just as important to have diverse, honestly, ages and body types for guys as
Mhm.
it is for girls. And I mean, I
100%.
think we like to think that it's more, and I do think it's more egregious, some of the like age differences between men and women on screen,
Yes.
and some of the roles that women end up with compared to guys. That like women on screen have a much shorter shelf life when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to action roles, except for Charlize.
Yeah, Charlize somehow.
I love my girl Charlize, and I think
This
it's because she only accepts the roles that she wants now at this point, and I think she likes action. Like Atomic Blonde, phenomenal.
isn't
How
she,
how
isn't she the one who did that movie where she made herself like morph into like this ratchet person? Is this
she
who I'm
yeah,
thinking of?
I think so.
What I'm trying to think of what movie that was. It was the movie that won her the Oscar. And then it was like amazing that she had just finished filming that movie like what 3 or 4 months before the Oscars, and that got released, and that she had already completely rechanged herself back to the way she looked.
Was it Tilly?
It might have been Tilly.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but she continues to take on these action roles, and I think it was Scarlett Johansson who was talking about it before. Where like once women in Hollywood tend to hit or near 30,
Yeah.
they're like, oh well, you can play moms.
Right.
Like, how do you feel about playing the mom?
Or if you're in your mid-20s, you're casted to play a high school kid,
Yes,
like in Mean
that's
Girls.
what I was saying. I look for a skincare routine, not one that makes me look like a teenager, but one that I could play a teenager on Riverdale. Like, that's the goal with my skincare.
What was I watching? Was I watching something on Facebook or Instagram that was like Amanda Siegfried said that the one regret she has is that she took the role in Mean Girls because it typecasted her for
Probably.
so long. It typecasted her as being the ditzy blonde because
Yeah.
she actually auditioned for Regina George, and
So
she
did
didn't.
Lindsay Lohan, I saw.
Huh?
Lindsay Lohan did too.
Right, Lindsay Lohan also auditioned for Regina George,
Mm-hmm.
and neither of them got it. They got different roles, but that didn't hurt Lindsay Lohan, but it severely hurt Amanda Siegfried because
Sure.
whenever she tried to get a leading role, it was like, what, you're not
Right. All they saw was Karen from Mean Girls.
right, and that's disappointing because there are so many great actors that get typecasted into certain niche roles that everybody knows. Like Seth
Yes.
Rogen has to be a pot smoking,
Yes.
Bearded man.
It's funny. I think Seth Rogen really shines under the radar as a producer and director. A lot of projects that he's been a part of, I've really, really enjoyed.
Yes.
And he won't even show up on screen. And so I think he could have shined as a serious actor, but you're right. He and James Franco got pigeonholed in all their projects together as stoner buddies.
Yeah.
And they never really got a chance to move past that on screen.
And Jonah Hill has been pigeonholed as the fat guy in all the movies.
Yep.
And that's
Yep,
unfortunate.
Melissa McCarthy.
Melissa McCarthy, the same thing. They're all pigeonholed
Same
into a
thing.
certain thing. Now, I mean, Jonah Hill has done his best to convert himself into somebody different, but Melissa McCarthy kind of embraces it a little bit because
Well, and
she knows that that's her niche. Like, she knows that she is going to be casted for these roles.
she does, but the thing is, when Melissa McCarthy first hit the scene, her first like big named character role was Suki on Gilmore Girls.
That's right.
And Suki actually has like the healthiest romantic relationship in the show.
Right.
She is like actually one of the more stable characters in the show, and she's actually really just treated like a person the entirety of the show.
Mhm.
She was one of the first plus size characters, I think, especially in the early 2000s when fat shaming and fat phobia were like full swing.
Tell me about it.
She actually had just a normal storyline, and nobody was like, oh wow, you're so lucky for a plus size person. Like, her character didn't get any of that.
No.
And that was her first role, I think, and she really got to shine. And then from there, she just kind of slid into this comedic fat girl role, and that was that. And it's a shame because I think she's got a lot more to offer than that.
Bridesmaids is a top 10 movie of all time. I don't care what anybody
for
has
sure.
to say.
For sure.
I mean, top 10 of all time. Like, not even of comedies. Like, it's top 10 of all time for me. And I like a lot of movies. Like,
I do too.
So, all right.
I do too.
What else do we have left?
Well, I guess I think sort of on the note of size, a big part of that concern was food and the fast food industry, which fast food in the 90s looked wildly different.
Oh, I missed the neon colors at Taco Bell when you sat down in a booth.
Everything was so much brighter then, and it's funny because actually, and we talked about this before, and I don't think we quite have the time to get as in depth with this, but I think, and it's September while we're filming this, and 9/11
had just happened.
I think really changed a lot of things in the entertainment industry, and I think suddenly it sort of pulled back this curtain and exposed this vulnerability in America that we really hadn't seen since Pearl Harbor, I guess.
Yeah, because let's think about it, because all the movies and all the TV shows we ever watched when we were kids were gullible, laughable.
They were campy as hell.
They were so campy.
Cheesy.
Well, and you all thought that you lived in this dystopia that, America was untouchable. And for a time, it looked like we were, because we had just finished up the Persian Gulf War. Everybody was hunky-dory. The only real thing that happened was Oklahoma City, the bombing of the IRS building there. But you still lived in this world, and then Columbine had already happened, so we knew that there were already nicks in the idea of what America is. And then 9/11 happened, and that changed the perspective on everything.
The scale that 9/11 was on compared to the other ones, because I think Columbine, because it was internal,
right,
it was America with America's problems.
Right, and we just pinned it on Eminem and moved on.
Right, it was easy to be like, oh well, that's not a real showing of America and who we are. But I think because 9/11 was so big and everybody saw it. I mean, I think talk about a generation that's been traumatized.
Yeah.
How many of us saw that in school as elementary school students, that you saw the towers, the plane, the people jumping out of the towers?
I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school when that happened.
I was 9.
Right.
I was 9.
I was a freshman in high school when it happened. I remember exactly where I was when we found out that the towers had been hit in class.
So it's funny, I actually, I can't place exactly where I was, or, I can't remember if we saw it in class or if I saw it at home. I don't remember where I was, but, just the imagery is burnt into my brain. And I think...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You're on your horse. Go.
No, I was saying that I think that really did sort of pull back this curtain, and all of a sudden, all this vibrant... laughing safety of the 90s and the early 2000s got ripped away, and I think we saw it in our advertising, and it didn't feel right.
Seventh Heaven wasn't Seventh Heaven anymore.
Right. It did. Those campy, safe, cozy shows didn't feel as believable all of the sudden, because you're like, well, I don't feel safe.
Right.
And it doesn't feel fun, and I think just everybody was so stunned. And so I think even... And that's not to say that there's a direct correlation from the events of 9/11 to the changing of fast food, but I do think it just didn't quite feel right. And I know that I think the real reason that they were saying that, think back to McDonald's, the early days of McDonald's, when they had a cast of mascot characters. They had Ronald, they had Grimace, they had the Hamburglar, the duck chick.
Right.
There was a pirate too, and a couple other characters that fizzled in and out, but it was fun, and you had these just exciting Disney World type characters.
Right. You had.
You know what Grimace is? Grimace is a taste bud.
I did not know that when you brought that up one time.
Purple taste bud.
There's your taste bud right there. There's your taste bud. And then
that's probably why I'm afraid of mascots.
And then here's the family. Here's the family photo. Are these pom poms? Are the three?
Oh yeah, they look like koosh balls. Remember those?
Yeah, I do.
They're random.
Yes. You just play with them, and you would pull on that one string until it snapped.
You throw them at your siblings.
Yeah, you throw them at everybody. You'd have a good time. I also think that 9/11, and we're going to talk about this in a later episode, how TRL kind of started the change into social media. TRL was also that first real show where you could also talk about your feelings. And Carson Daly was, not there on 9/11. He wasn't even there on, I don't think they were there 9/12. I think they came back the Friday of 9/11, because I think 9/11 was a Tuesday. And they finally, it was. And I think they finally came back with TRL on a Friday, and it was no music, no nothing. It was just teens being able to talk to Carson. You can call in, you could text in, you could email input. it was our way to figure out what happened. Like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
and it was really like the first exposure of like this mass consumption of a huge deal. Like 9/11 was the first time where you changed the channel and it wasn't cartoons somewhere, or it wasn't music
Right.
videos, or it wasn't, a food cooking show. It was literally everybody was showing coverage of 9/11. You couldn't
Yeah.
escape
And
it.
I mean, it probably also really changed with that, like the news game of how serious news has gotten, and that 24/7 news and news and news and news. And interestingly enough, I think in like the broadcasting community, you'll find that so many people, and I get it because it was a history altering moment, and every person in broadcasting you talk to is like, I broke the news to everybody, I broke the story of 9/11. And I'm like, there's no way all of you did, first of all.
No.
But I think that mentality of like, oh, you have to be first. If you're not first,
Right.
you're last. And I think that has kind of forced everybody to want to jump the gun on delivering breaking news rather than sometimes just sitting on the facts.
So
and
social media,
waiting.
social media is the reason why TV news sometimes gets things wrong at first,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you want to be first on Twitter with the information. A perfect example, as we're recording this, we're getting ready for the Queen's funeral on Monday.
Yeah.
And BBC technically tweeted out, somebody from the BBC tweeted out, hey, Queen Elizabeth is dead. And then 2 minutes later, that tweet was gone, but somebody had snapshot it. It was everywhere. And they were all, and the BBC was mortified because they know they can't say a word until Buckingham Palace puts out the press release that says that it happened. And so there was this rumor running around for 2.5 hours that, the Queen's already gone. Why are we waiting? But we all knew the rules. We all had to wait for the flag to be lowered to half mast at Buckingham Palace, and the announcement had to be made.
Yeah. And like gotcha journalism, that idea, it's been around since newspapers, like
Yes.
since the
Yeah,
start
yeah.
of like real print newspapers
But in this society,
competing journalism. But I do think in this society, it's so much harder to tell
Yeah.
what's real and what's not.
well, and it's so much harder because everybody literally wants to be the first. They want to have the
Right.
exclusivity to say, I was actually the person that got it.
Right.
So,
Right. And I think it's more important to get it right than to get it first. But
I mean, that's
what do I know?
Right. I mean, that's most
It's great to be right and first, but
that's most newsrooms these days. So,
yeah, no, I know. But I think it was sort of these bright, colorful. So there's sort of a twofold here with the fast food chains.
Yeah.
That I think, and maybe it was even a little bit before the events of 9/11, but because I really don't remember exactly the timeline
yeah.
of events growing up, which is what I'm pulling from, is
Yeah,
just
I
straight
understand.
memory. But these bright, colorful mascot characters, like the way that fast food was fun is apparently how they were blaming a lot of childhood obesity within our generation on these fun characters.
Yeah. Well,
And I think attaching the toys to it, I mean, kids were always like,
we
I
always
wanna
wanted to go. Right. We
McDonald's.
always wanted to go to
They're
McDonald's
like,
to
you
get
don't
the
have
Happy Meal.
to. You're like, but I want the new My Little Pony. I mean, we did it. We wanted to go to Burger King for that gold Pikachu card from the
Exactly. And then, I mean, you got to catch them all. I get it. I completely understand.
My mom will tell you that was literally the worst day of her life.
But
Which tells you she's had pretty good days so far. If taking your children to see the Pokemon movie
Right.
and then going to Burger King to get the gold Pikachu card was the worst day, it's not too bad.
no, it's not. That's not too bad at all. But it almost felt like all the fast food chains grew up after 9/11 for a while, because now
Yes.
we have clean lines. Everything
Yes.
is minimalistic in these restaurants because that's what we, as our generation, likes. But there are now restaurant chains, Burger King being one of them, who all of a sudden is like, you know what? Maybe we need to go back to the retro look, which is now their
Yep.
normal look again. And
Yep.
and slowly but surely, everybody's going back the other direction because, like you said about body dysform, being
Dysmorphia,
and body positivity is great now, but in about 5 years, we're probably going to flip the coin, and Weight Watchers is back in fad. The same thing's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Now you got to train the young kids that, hey, you want to come to McDonald's, you want the toys, you want to play at the Playscape again.
Yep. No, I mean, I would be excited to have kids sort of have a childhood again because I think childhood has gotten a lot shorter. I think millennials actually had a very unique childhood in that our childhood got sort of extended
Yes.
almost into our 20s. That I think because we, the generations before us, like, and Gen X a little, like the younger end of Gen X, I think is right there with
Yes,
millennials.
yes.
But even more so than Gen Z, I think our childhood was extended because we didn't grow up with the internet
Right.
immediately.
Agreed.
It wasn't right in our hands. So we had that slow paced, don't come home till the lights go on kind of childhood. We all did. I mean, old people like to forget that. They're like, back in my day. And I'm like, we had that too.
Right.
But
But
we
also,
also had the internet.
yeah.
And I think because the economy crashed when we were teens.
True.
And we couldn't start our lives the way that our parents did right out of high school. We're like, it wasn't uncommon for them to graduate high school, start the career that they're very likely in now, get married and have kids all by the time they were 25.
That's the other thing, is the fact that, our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they were taught, get married as soon as you find your high school sweetheart and find that career that you're in forever. Whereas our generation kind of was the first one that opened our eyes and we're like, why are we rushing into everything?
I think it was a combination of opening our eyes to that, where we're like, well, what if we don't want kids yet?
Right.
Or what if we want more? And I think as women certainly got a lot more freedoms. But like, women couldn't buy a credit card in our own name until like the 70s.
Yeah, no, I think I knew that. I think I did.
Yeah.
But that's still
It
sad.
wasn't until like the 70s that we couldn't open credit cards in our own name. So I think as more of us started working more jobs and we were like, we can't handle house and job and kids. And we were discovering who we were too. And I think we have a much stronger sense of self, I think, than a lot of previous generations.
Yes.
But I also think because the economy was bad when we were 18, you couldn't start a career because we were getting turned away. They
Truth.
were like, well, you don't have that degree, so we can't hire you. So we're like, well, okay, we'll get that degree.
Right, and-
so we come back and we're like, okay, we've got this degree. And jobs were like, well, where's your experience? And you were like, I don't know. I was getting this degree. I don't have it.
You wanted us...
We can't hire you.
Right, you wanted the
So
paperwork.
we got stuck in this awkward, like, second adolescence, I think, well into our 20s, which I think Gen Z didn't get because they have grown up with the internet pretty much in hand. And I think the internet has really shortened childhood
Exponentially.
of all of the access to mature content. And
Yes.
whether kids know it or not, and obviously they're going to seek out stuff that feels a little bit mature for them,
Right.
but like sometimes it really is too mature for them. And I think that like kids don't have an awkward teen phase anymore
Nope.
because there's all these YouTube tutorials and all these style icons that they have immediate access to, where like we had to go through magazines and publications, and there were several layers to get to celebrities for
Right.
us, where now they have instant access to celebrities, but almost a second tier of celebrities with influencers.
Yes.
They're much closer to home and they feel much more accessible and more like
Yes.
the fast fashion version of celebrities.
Everybody wants to be a celebrity. We all knew that. That's been the lifelong goal since the 90s and early 2000s. Everybody
Right,
wants
and
to
I
be a
think-
celebrity.
I think the rise of reality TV really planted that idea in a lot of our generation's head. It's just we grew up a little bit before influencers were cool, so we never had the chance to do it the way that the kids behind us are. But I think that access to this fake perfection
Right.
is taking away these key growth moments that you learn in childhood. And I think the fear of making mistakes, because Gen Z is being watched. They're afraid that if they say something on camera, if they record any stupid mistake, it's going to come back down the road because somebody's going to be like, well, back in 2022,
Right,
you said
right,
something
right,
that's
right,
now
right.
considered homophobic
Right.
and hateful. And you'd be like, well, I was young and dumb then, and I didn't mean it.
But
And
you
I
don't
think
but you don't
because
know any
they're
better.
so afraid of making
Yeah.
right, and they're so afraid of making mistakes that they don't even allow themselves to. They don't even try. And I think it's like you learn critical skills. You learn much faster by making mistakes than you do by being perfect.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, hey, the camera's always rolling when you're an influencer. When you're trying to be a content creator, 9 times out of 10, the camera's always on. And a lot of
Yeah,
people and a lot of these teens don't realize how much work goes into actually being a content creator, to being an influencer.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
beggars can't be choosers, right?
It is.
I think this is a good
Right.
I think this is a good place to wrap this one up.
I think so too. So if we touched on any topics that you have more to say about, please let us know. Put it in the comments.
Yes.
Tweet at us.
Tweet at us. You can see our Twitter handles at the bottom. If you don't, it's at Mike Lichniak and at Leah Rizzo on Twitter.
And if there's any topics that you'd like us to talk about, throw some ideas our way. We're
Right.
always looking for ideas.
So
And I think, yeah, we're getting ready to, we'll wrap this one up and we'll catch you with our next.
what are we doing next time? Have we figured it out yet?
That's a great question. We'll either,
It's either we're doing TRL and we're gonna do how TRL is the start of social media. I will.
yeah,
I will.
we're either diving deeper into one of the topics that we covered today, or we're going to kind of mix it up so we don't just stay in the 90s, because we don't want to have people think like, we guys only talk about the 90s.
Right. No, we will talk about everything with this podcast, but
So we will talk about a little bit about everything, because we had discussed like maybe helicopter parenting as an option, because I really do feel for Gen Z, and even, what's it now? Is Gen Alpha the ones behind them?
I don't know.
Think
Do I look like I'm that
Gen
smart?
Alpha. Well, because here's the thing. I keep saying Gen Z, and it's the same thing how everybody was like talking about millennials like we were children,
Yeah.
and we're like, actually, we're 25, actually, we're 30. Like,
We're actually applying for mortgages at this point.
right, like, actually, we're adults. And so I don't want to do the same thing to Gen Z, because, like, I think Gen Alpha, they're probably like, what, 15, 16, 17? Like, they
I
might be
think
the
so.
teenagers of today. So, and I feel for them. Let us be your older siblings. Let us be your cool older siblings.
Yes.
Like your cool aunt and uncle.
Yes.
Let us do that for you.
It is generation.
We'll buy you alcohol. We'll buy you alcohol and tell
right.
you cautionary tales.
So, millennials are from 80 to 94. Gen Z is from 95 to 09, and now Generation Alpha is from 2010 to 2024.
Ew. I can't believe there are people born in 2010.
Or in 2022, I know. It's awesome.
See, like, babies are fine if I'm like, all right, you're a baby. But if you're like a 10-year-old and you have like thoughts and opinions and you're like, I was born in 2010, I'll be like, no, don't say that to me.
But again, post, comment, say hi.
Yes. Please interact. Let us know what you think.
Tell us if we're awesome. Tell us if we suck.
Tell us what you think we can work on.
Preferably constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism, not just criticism. We like the constructive part.
But yeah.
But you know, we'll take the criticism too.
So next time, come with your snacks and we'll keep yapping.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us.